Spring practices seem to wind down more and more as we get through the month of April. And obviously, right? I mean, spring's almost over. We've got another week or so of spring games. But for right now, we're going to take a look at some of the biggest storylines coming out of spring practice, at least some of the biggest storylines that I've caught so far. This is not going to be a one and done episode. We're going to do a couple more of these spring storylines as we lead towards the preview season that we have starting on June 1st. But today I wanted to start with some of the big names: the Alabamas, the Michigans, the Ohio States, the Floridas, the Tennessees, and Wake Forest, because I was at their spring game on Saturday and I want to talk about what I saw there. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This is Armchair Analysis. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day so far. This is Monday, April 20th, 2026. And man, this has been a busy last couple of days. We didn't get an episode Friday. It was going to be this video Friday. However, I decided that I wanted to hold off on that. I didn't have anything else planned. I had kind of a busy day anyways. So without having anything else planned, I decided to just kind of hold off on Friday, come back Monday, get set into the week with this spring game topic. So I thought this was kind of a good place to land and a good place to start for the day. So hopefully you guys will enjoy today's video. We'll enjoy some of the impact or input here from my perspective of what I've got to see and what I've heard so far throughout some of these practices. I do ask you guys, if you are new around here, please leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know all your thoughts and everything I may have missed. Keep in mind, I'm going to say this throughout preview season. I'm going to say it here as well. You know your team better than I know my, well, not I know my team, but you know your team better than I know your team. And in saying that, there are going to be some things that I missed. There are going to be some things that I just kind of gloss over. Keep in mind, some of it, again, is being saved for preview season. There's going to be more conversations there as we kind of take a look into why I believe some of these teams will have the years they will have. But for right now, let's go ahead and get into what we have for today. We're going to start with Alabama. A-Day was a couple weeks ago now, as we sit here. Well, not a couple weeks ago. It was about a week and a half ago. And there were a lot of conversations going into this. There was a quarterback battle that felt like it kind of took the center of attention. Would it be Keelan Russell taking a step forward? Would it be Austin Mack being able to kind of insert himself as a potential favorite for that starting spot? And it turned me into really just a day of rumor and uncertainty at the quarterback position, and not really for the reason you thought. We expected a quarterback battle at Alabama. I think everybody did. And I think Keelan Russell came in and really took charge of the job. Now, I don't know that he's going to be the starter. I don't think there's going to be a named starter until later in fall. But Keelan Russell definitely made an impact early in this one. Austin Mack, the storyline there, he wasn't fully healthy. That's what they're saying. And I have no reason not to believe that. I think there's certainly some legitimacy to it. And I'm excited to see kind of where this lands in the fall. Will Austin Mack be able to kind of put himself back in the conversation? Will Keelan Russell continue to kind of take that step forward and continue pulling away in this battle? That'll be a question mark that we certainly come back to later. At wide receiver, it's unfortunate to say that Noah Rogers, the NC State transfer, has been injured. I believe a lower body injury. I want to say hamstring, but I don't remember for sure. If I'm being completely honest, I didn't write it down and I should have. But I do know it was a lower body injury, and it's likely that he's going to miss the start of the season. It's not a guarantee, but it's very likely. That being said, there are some names to look out for in terms of who might be able to replace him. I don't think there will be a full-on replacement, anybody that can just take the job and move forward. But I think that we're going to see probably a mixture of Cedarian Morgan and Derek Meadows. Forgive me, because I was reading through some stuff on On3 earlier today, and it feels like Derek Meadows seems to be the point out, but I expect there to be a little bit of a mix of Cedarian Morgan. He looked really good, was actually, if I'm not mistaken, the leading receiver on A-Day last week. So there's a few things there that could certainly be interpreted as if maybe Cedarian Morgan can be the guy that takes charge and jumps into that role. I don't really know what to fully expect. Again, that's something that's going to come along more as fall camp approaches. These position battles, unless there's one that's like directly announced, I don't see any reason to believe or even assume that something's going to be done other than, again, when we do preview season, which that's a little bit more of just an opinion-based idea than it is anything really to do with what we hear or see coming out of these camps. That's kind of all I had for Alabama right now. We'll get more on Alabama as the summer goes along. I'm almost certain of that. We look down a little further though. You got Florida. That's going to be the next team we bring up here today. And the biggest question mark to me is Aaron Philo versus Tramel Jones. I've got a little more I'm going to get on Florida in the future, so make sure you stick around if you're a Florida fan. I got more coming for you. But for right now, the biggest storyline I had going into this game was Aaron Philo versus Tramel Jones. And Philo didn't look great. Tramel Jones impressed, I think, a lot of people. And now there's a little bit less certainty. Again, Buster Faulkner coming in as the new offensive coordinator. I think there's a lot of excitement about this offense and what it's going to look like at Florida, because certainly it had its own impact at Georgia Tech. We'll see what happens. I'm expecting Aaron Philo to still be the starter, but Tramel Jones, that his running ability, I think, being a little bit more than what Aaron Philo has, could turn this battle on its head a little bit. There's still a lot to look for and like. The receiving room looks really good. I've been very impressed with what I've heard about Micah Mays. Of course, the Wake Forest transfer going over there to Florida and joining this offense feels like it's really going to be a good fit for him. It feels like this receiver room again is going to take a big step forward in 2026. The biggest question mark I had was this game ended in a tie. Obviously, a lot of spring games will end in ties. That's completely normal. But I was surprised that they did that, especially John Summerall. You feel like you want to come out and show a competitive spirit right away and give somebody a win and a loss. And it didn't happen. I was a little surprised by that. It just didn't feel like it would be Summerall style. But nothing really to worry about there. I think that's more of a piece if you want to talk about a team not being competitive later in the year. Maybe you come back to this as like a hammer at home point, but I don't really see that happening. I think this is going to be a good team this year, and it's going to come down to that quarterback position, who can step forward and kind of be the better of the two between Philo and Jones. But that's going to be again determined in the fall. There's a lot of time between now and then. Speaking of big quarterback battles, Tennessee's got one, and I think there's a two-way battle, but I'm not going to write off Ryan Staub. Ryan Staub, I think, is a clear number 3. But I'm very, very open to seeing him as number 2 or even number 1. I think he would fit really well into this Heupel offense. I think he can make a lot of things happen. I don't want to write off Ryan Staub. It just feels like all the things that I've heard so far point towards George McIntyre and Faison Brandon. That's where I kind of land with this right now. That's what all the storylines are. That's what everybody's talking about. That's kind of what it feels like. The hardest thing with these, A-Day, Florida, Tennessee, none of them had any recognition whatsoever. There was hardly any media there taking any videos other than probably what the team was doing. And that's kind of the new age, right? The transfer portal and everything going on in the spring. But it felt to me like, from what we're hearing, it's going to be George McIntyre. I feel no real concern to say that George McIntyre is probably the starter in the fall. But again, I don't want to write out anybody because I feel like this is still very wide open. I think Ryan Staub could certainly make something happen. I think Faison Brandon could come in and they just be like, you know what? This is one of those years we're just going to let you have it. They've got a good running back room, a little better than I think people are going to give them credit for. It will help a younger quarterback. I don't think it can carry a younger quarterback, but I think it could help if Faison Brandon ends up being the guy. There's certainly no lack of interest in this quarterback battle going forward. In saying that, a lot of things are being made of this Tennessee defense in year one and their first look under Jim Knowles. And here's what I'm going to tell you from the very beginning. Exercise caution. Because what did we see? Did we see a really good defense, or did we see a offense that doesn't fully know who they are yet? Doesn't really have that identity. Doesn't really even know what they're going to try to do. I mean, who they're going to be, who the quarterback will be. Like there's a lot of question marks. There was a lot of uncertainty, and it sounds like a lot of inconsistency on the offensive side. Is the defense really going to get the credit for that, or are we going to see something similar to last year? I don't feel like a turnaround this quick is going to happen and put this team in position to be a true contender and really one of the best defenses in college football. I just don't see that happening. There's a lot of buzz in Vol Nation about this defense. And I just again state exercise caution. We've seen it before. Jim Knowles, just last year, for example, Jim Knowles comes to Penn State. It takes a while. That defense doesn't really look great for the majority of the year. It's very possible it could happen again this year. And keep in mind, your secondary has been struggling a lot the last couple years. I don't know if it gets much better. You bring in a lot of transfers, there's a lot of opportunities, but it's just, again, caution early because you don't really know what's going to happen as time goes on. Looking at the wide receiver room, there seems to be a lot of conversation about who will be wide receiver 3. They know Mikey Matthews, they know Brandon Staley. They don't know anything else. And it feels like there's some guys who could certainly open into those conversations. And it feels like there's some guys who could really take charge of that spot. Nobody's pulled away yet, which is kind of what you would expect. Again, 15 practices. Nobody's going to pull away unless they were already ahead at the end of last year. So nothing really to feel here. Just kind of curious to see who the wide receivers are. A good wide receiver room and a good core can, again, help younger quarterbacks. This is a team that has 2 starts among them at quarterback, and those 2 come from Ryan Staub at Colorado last year. Beyond that, this is a fresh group of quarterbacks who have no experience in meaningful situations. It's going to be tough, and you're going to need pieces around them. Again, I talked about the running back room. We talked about the offensive line that they're a little concerned about, especially on the interior. We talk about this wide receiver room. There's a lot of unknowns on the offense that makes me, again, back to the defense, a little hesitant there. It doesn't mean they're going to be bad. I don't have any reason to believe Tennessee won't be a probably 6 to 8 win team. I just don't feel like they're going to be better than that because, again, there's just so much inexperience going on right now. It feels like all the eggs are going towards 2027. And if that's truly the case, Faison Brandon will be the starter in the fall. That's what I believe, but I don't. Again, we don't know. It's April 20th after all. All right, let's talk Ohio State, and then we'll talk about the 2 teams that I feel like I know the best around the college football landscape. At Ohio State, let's lead it off here. There's no quarterback battle. There's not. This is going to be a team that has a really solid guy returning in Julian Sand. And should he get injured, we don't hope for injuries, but they're always around the college football world. They're always around the sports world in general. When we don't hope for injuries, we know that if Julian Sand goes down, Tavian St. Clair jumps in, and I think this offense stays the same and can fly at the same level or can take that step forward. That's how confident I am in Tavian St. Clair going forward. He looked really good in the spring game. That was no surprise. But I think he is game ready now. And if he is needed to be put in one of these games in a meaningful situation, I think he's going to be a guy that can come in and take care of business. The only caveats to that are playing some of the more complex teams in the conference. Obviously, the end of the year against Michigan, if that's his first meaningful time in a tight game, that might be a little bit of a tough one. There are some other defenses I would be curious to see him face, but otherwise, if he has to jump into a game at any point and try to carry this offense otherwise, I think that it's going to be just fine and going to be successful. So, again, no quarterback battle, not even hinting at one. They aren't even hinting at one. It's Julian saying from the very beginning. But again, if an injury happens, St. Clair is going to be ready to go. I think that we saw glimpses of Julian Sand and his athletic ability throughout the course of this spring and really in the spring game. Um, my friend Colin says it best. What happens when he takes off the black shirt? What happens when that's not there to protect him? Will he still be that athletic guy? That's a question mark that I think everybody really has, because if they free him up, it means, one, they're confident in QB2. I think that is something that we should really be talking about, is the confidence in quarterback number 2. They didn't have it last year. They knew that Julian Sand was their guy and needed to be their guy. This year, I think there is a confidence that if something happens to Sand, again, St. Clair comes in and it flies at the same level. If that's the case, maybe they open things up a little more for Julian Sand, give him a little more of a run to be able to be that athletic player that I think we all expected and can see him being. It's not going to be the Sand legs show all year long. He's not going to run for 100 yards a game, but there are going to be key moments where maybe he will pull one on a read and take it for maybe 10, 15 yards. And I think that would be just a tremendous boost to this offense, even in itself, kind of giving another look at defenses. To me, it felt like it was obvious. If there's going to be an issue for this Ohio State team, it's the offensive line, and it's just a lack of depth. And I think that that's kind of the storyline that a lot of people are having in Columbus right now. Obviously, they're excited about Austin Sareveld coming back. He's going to be the most experienced guy, probably the best offensive lineman on the team. With that said, there's not many others we can say the same about yet. And with that kind of being out there, it is certainly a position of interest. It is a group of interest on this Ohio State team. I think that this is not really going to be something that we're concerned about later in the year, because I think the strength and conditioning is one of the best in college football, if not the best in college football. The ability for this team to be ready to go at all times, especially in the trenches. I don't really feel like this is going to be a problem when the fall comes around, especially when we get down the line in the season. But if they can't stay healthy, they had, I think, 5 injuries going into the spring game, including Sareveld. If that is the case, then maybe we start talking a little more, because as you drop down that depth chart, it starts to get a little more murky. This team needs to stay healthy on the offensive line. That's the biggest question mark. Right now, they're not. Will they be healthy in the fall? I think so. It seems like the majority of these guys are going to be ready to go come fall. But it will be, again, just a group of interest to kind of see, again, health, depth, how this team, how they progress in the weight room, and being able to get their techniques down. I don't see any reason to be concerned. I'm not raising red flags or anything. It's just kind of again, a position of interest for this OSU team. Defense looks great. One place I read, which uh, I believe came from Letterman Row, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's the On3 site for OSU. Um, they mentioned Bo Atkinson as a guy who really stepped up this spring. Obviously, you can only take so much from spring practices, and I kind of should have led with that from the beginning. But they're very excited about what he's been doing. He's the backup to Kenyatta Jackson as far as all things are considered. Bo Atkinson could be a really good guy to kind of bring in, and I think that's going to be the case. He's going to rotate a lot with Kenyatta Jackson and kind of keep this team fresh. This is a deep defensive line. This is a deep defense as a whole. I don't really expect there to be any concerns on this defense at all. I don't think there's a single one. The secondary looks good. I've heard a lot about a handful of guys there. This is just kind of looks like it's going to be steady once again. Probably one of the best defenses, if not the best in college football again, because the scheme is simple yet effective. Matt Patricia does a great job of getting guys ready to go, getting guys comfortable in his defense. And I think that was the biggest question mark I had, was what he would do last year, how Matt Patricia's play calling would be affected, how quickly could guys learn his scheme. It was simple. It was right to the point immediately. What happens when you have Ohio State talent, but it's also what happens when you have a guy who can really kind of coach players and be a guy who can know exactly what he needs to do and how he needs to do it to get these guys ready to go for a season, for a spring, whatever it may be. I'm very excited about this OSU defense. I think, again, it could be one of the best, if not the best, in college football again in 2026. We'll move back up. We'll go to Michigan real quick, because I think there's less points to make here, but there's certainly a lot of conversation coming out of it. Bryce Underwood looked bad, plain and simple. First quarter, he was the all-time QB, essentially. It didn't look good. A lot of misses, a lot of overthrows. It feels very eerily similar to Joe Milton, and I would hope that could be changed. I would hope that there's obviously Coy Detmer and Jason Beck, and those guys are obviously working with him to make this a little better, to continue to improve things. And you saw some pieces of improvement, but the biggest thing is still touch. He just doesn't have it yet, and that's been certainly the biggest hindrance to the offense over the last season, and what probably will be the biggest hindrance should he be the starter again this fall, early at least, is just continuing to work with him on getting the ball to guys in a sensible manner. Is going to take some time. I don't think this is an overnight transformation. You can see glimpses of the improvement, but not quite the improvement that we're looking for. You want to talk about something that's interesting, though. Tommy Carr was really good, and the biggest thing for me, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit here with the next team as well, is that he was just decisive. He knew what he wanted to do before the play started, was able to make the correct read and not turn the ball over, not put the ball in a dangerous position, was able to do things right from the very beginning. And when you look at that, and when you watched how he made decisions versus how Bryce Underwood made decisions, you could sense a very big difference in just the overall speed at getting things done. I felt very confident that if you put Tommy Carr in this position in a real game, that he would be able to do the same thing. That's a really good sign going forward. Now, I don't think there's a quarterback battle. I think Bryce Underwood is expected and should be the starter. But if we're going to see Tommy Carr this year at Michigan, his legs will not be a problem. His decision making, I don't think is going to be a problem. And I'm going to be honest, I would be more than comfortable watching Tommy Carr take snaps under center at quarterback for Michigan in 2026 as a starter. I know that's a bold take. I know that's probably not what people want to hear at Michigan right now. I wouldn't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. You see it back there. I don't want to hear it. But because of all the things that went into getting Bryce Underwood at Michigan, all the things that went down to make that happen, and yet that we feel like a legacy quarterback essentially coming in, grandson of Lloyd Carr, of course, could come in and take it immediately, and not because of his name, but because of what he's actually doing on the field. Yeah, I think that would certainly raise some eyebrows. I'm not expecting anything like that to happen. I'm very adamant. I think Bryce Underwood's a starter, but I wouldn't be uncomfortable if it's Tommy Carr. That's what I want to make sure I hammer home. I would not be uncomfortable if that was the situation. It should go without saying this offensive staff created the second best offense in rushing last year. That being, of course, Jason Beck, Kyle Whittingham. This entire staff at Utah had the second best rushing attack in college football. Michigan's best feature last year was their running back room with Justice Haynes, Jordan Marshall, and others. You're going to see something very similar this year. You're going to see Jordan Marshall. You're going to see Savion Hyder, and you're going to see Bryson Cusdahl a lot. Micah Kapana is going to be out for the season. That was announced a little while back. That's an unfortunate depth hit, but it's not it's not unfathomable. It's not something that can't be overcome. This is a team that's going to be really good in the trenches. You can already kind of feel the difference in strength and conditioning just from this game. You felt a difference. The O-line looked better and was able to kind of hold their weight against their defensive line a little more. The defensive line had their moments of winning and looking really good. I'm not really concerned about the strength side of this team. I think this is going to be one of the toughest teams in college football. Why do I think that? Because this strength and conditioning program right here at Michigan, has worked for the last 20 years at Utah. Why do we believe anything's going to change between those two other than the colors on the uniforms and the name that they're representing? It won't. This Michigan team is going to be one of the toughest in college football. That should go without saying. This summer, all these workouts over the summer, all these things they're going to be doing, all these things they've already done over the course of the spring since this staff was hired, it's showing already, and this is going to continue to get better and better as time goes on. You look at the side of this where the score was 7-6, the late touchdown by the Mays team to get the win, led by Tommy Carr. And that wasn't the only drive that could have ended in a touchdown. The end of the half, the missed kick by Trey Bukowski was certainly unfortunate for the Mays team, but in a sense, like, you felt like that touchdown drive was brewing all game. Tommy Carr did a great job of leading this team down the field and being able to be that kind of cog in the wheel to keep things going. The defense has dominated this spring game over the last decade. There have not been many questions about that. And I think people are going to make more out of the offenses not scoring than they are the defenses. But what I'm going to tell you is that Jay Hill, we talked about it with Matt Patricia, Jay Hill is one of the quickest installs in defense that you can find. But it's a complex scheme, and it works really well. I do not feel I don't feel like they did anything complex on Saturday. I just think the defense is more ready. I think these guys know what they're doing and are more experienced. That side of things is going to make this just a lot tougher on the offense going forward. But it's going to build a lot of confidence for this offense as well. When they get into game one, when they go to game two at home against Oklahoma, I feel like that confidence is going to kind of start floating to the top here a little bit, because this team will have seen some of the toughest things they could possibly see in their own facilities. There's not going to be many defenses that can match that. I think Ohio State's going to be one of them. I would expect Oklahoma to be a tougher defense, but I don't think it's going to be quite there. I would expect, well, without looking at the schedule, I'm not going to expect anything. I don't want to say anything that's not right, but I would expect there's not going to be too many teams on the schedule. Maybe one or two, maybe a third, at most, that gives you a feeling as though Michigan will not be able to have an upper hand because of what they've done within their own facility. That's just how I personally feel about it. Again, I don't care who the quarterback is. I don't care what anybody feels in terms of what you think might happen on the field. I just think that behind the scenes, nobody's challenging Michigan harder than Michigan is right now. And that's the way Kyle Whittingham's always done it. That's the way it's always going to be. Expect big things this fall. I don't think this team's going to be I don't think this team wins more than 10 games, just based on early feel. But I wouldn't be surprised if this team's 11-1 and going to the playoff at the end of the year. Moving on, I'm going to close this video out with Wake Forest, simply because I was there. I was in attendance for this spring game. I felt like there were a lot of things that I enjoyed, and I kind of just wanted to get it out of the way early because, again, there's more to come down the line. Probably another video on spring recaps this week. Wake Forest. We'll start with the bigger things that I felt questions about. The quarterback position. Gio Lopez comes over from North Carolina. We felt like this was his job, and it was always going to be his job. And I still feel that way. I don't think there's really going to be any drastic change made over a spring game or over a course of spring practice. What I will say is that Steele Pizzella has been really good this spring. He has. I went back and looked through some of the message board stuff, some of the notes that come out of practices, and Steele Pizzella has been really good all spring long. He has been able to work this offense in a way that even Gio hasn't really been able to manage, at least when it comes to general decision making. Again, it comes down to that kind of what I talked about with Michigan. I'm going to talk about it here. Pizzella had a ability to just make decisions that were smart and in the best interest of the team. You didn't see many negative plays from him in terms of passing the ball. We saw some negative plays in terms of the fact that the D-line is that good in the run game, but otherwise, if Pizzella had the ball in his hands, it felt like the play turned out to be either a neutral or net positive. No turnovers, no mistakes, no poor throws, just being generally smart with the football. And that feels like it's going to go a long way should he end up being the starter. I don't think there's a quarterback battle by any means. I think it's Gio Lopez's job, and I need to be very clear about that too. But when I say that, once again, I'm going to tell you, I would be very comfortable watching number 6 take snaps in the fall if he was the starting quarterback. I would be very comfortable. I'm very comfortable with Gio Lopez. I think he's a really good quarterback, and I think that over the course of this summer, Jake Dickert, Rob Ezell, this group is going to work really well with him to put him in position to be successful this fall. Kind of similar to what a lot of people thought about Robbie Ashford last year, if you want to go that route, like a guy who'd been kind of a journeyman around college football, not really ever taken seriously, not ever a guy who anybody thought would be much of anything. He led this offense really well last year. Remember, this was a team that won, 9 games last year, including the Mayo Bowl. Expect similar this year. I think this is going to be that kind of a team, and we'll talk more about the real reason why here in a minute. The wide receiver room is really interesting to me. I feel like Carlos Hernandez is a clear number 1 wide receiver, and shouldn't be a surprise. He's been in this program he's been in the Dickert program for a while now. I think he's going to be the guy. I think he's wide receiver 1. There's no question. Behind him, Chase Tyler, Cam Shanks. Cam Shanks, I think, is going to be in the slot and probably going to we'll see kind of what he does. I'm intrigued by him being here. Obviously, coming from Arkansas, being a guy who didn't really ever break out in any way. Interested to see what this could look like for him. Chase Tyler, I think, is a really comfortable guy who could be that number two. Uh, Bryce Kania has been really solid all spring long. Seems like he's been the deep ball threat all spring. Whether it was coming from Geo or Steele, he's been the guy I've read the most notes about being able to bring in a deep ball, touchdown, whatever you want to call it. And so he's a guy that I'm curious to see how he carries forward. I think his speed and size is certainly playable at any point this year as a redshirt freshman. That'll be an interesting point for me to look at. Um, and then on Saturday we saw a few good moments from Zeke Johnson. I just don't know where he falls on the depth chart. I think he's 5 or lower at a minimum, and I would say probably lower. Zeke Johnson is if I'm not mistaken, a redshirt junior, a guy that I certainly could see being impactful. He's got the speed to do so, the shiftiness to do so, but will he and where will he land? That's again just kind of a generalized question for me. I don't know. Um, the offensive line I think looked better than they did last year, and now when you play your own team every year, you kind of learn or every day you learn who your guys are and what their moves are and how they get around, kind of what their more successful side is. So it could very well be that this offensive line isn't much better and that they just know how to defend themselves. But I felt like they held up really well this in the spring game. It looked good. The sets never. It always felt like they had a chance. I don't want to say that they always won because they didn't. They didn't win. I think the defense actually won the majority of snaps. But the O line didn't lose this game for the offensive group, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to make here. Uh, Going off of that, the defensive line and this defense in general is going to be what carries this team. This defense looks really good once again, and I think they're very confident in who they are. Scotty Hazelton's done a great job at kind of turning things around defensively for this program. And while it wasn't necessarily perfect last year, they did have a lot of chances to win games simply because of what their defense did for them. And this year, I'm expecting a lot. This defensive line looks really good. They are anchored down in the middle. Um, Forgive me because I'm gonna go look at the roster real quick because I need to make sure I get the name right here. But this defensive tackle, Sadir Mitchell, 6'6", 355, transfers from LSU in Texas. He is an absolute monster. Played in 5 games last year for LSU. Was their backup defensive tackle. Felt like he was going to be again this year. Transfers in, and you could just sense that he was from SEC country. I mean, just the size, the way that he took up space over the middle. He is going to be a big key for this team because I think that kind of size is not very often seen in the ACC. It's going to be interesting to watch what you see, especially up the middle, for Sadir Mitchell and this Deacon defense. As for the edge rushers, I feel very confident about the edge rushers. I think you got 4 of them that could come in and do anything. I'm very excited about the Hardy brothers, Langston and Camden Hardy. They're going to be 2 guys who are, Langston being the one on the depth chart in the rush position, Cam coming in number 2. These 2 guys are looking really good, and going to be a factor. It feels like Langston Hardy, they were excited about him really going into this spring. He's been dealing with some injury stuff, so that's going to be a question mark, but I don't think it's really worth begging too many questions because he's going to be healthy by the time fall comes around. As for Camden Hardy, he looked really good in the spring game. He ran with the ones in place of Langston and looked really good, was able to set the edge well. This defensive line looks very, very sound, and that's going to be helpful everywhere else on the defense. The linebacker room, I think it's one of the deepest in the ACC. I talked about Vincent Ferenzi here, who comes over from Dayton. I think he's going to be a guy who moves up the depth chart as time goes on over the fall. It sounds like he's starting to move up the depth chart now, or at least starting to make some noise in the locker room about it. But he is going to probably not go any further than number 3 or 4. The reason for that is Frank Casano and Aiden Hall. They are the two linebackers who you'll see in this 4-2-5 scheme all year long. Those two are, barring injury, far and away the two guys you want to see. Frank Casano, I think, is going to be all ACC caliber at linebacker this year. When you look at the secondary, Deuce Blades comes over from FIU, was All Conference USA last year, and looks very good. First possession of the game, he ends up getting an interception, and kind of sets the tone for the defense from the very beginning. The defense, any stop, for turnover on downs or a turnover forced in general, was worth 7 points. He puts the defense, the defensive team, up 7-0 from the beginning. And while the offense looked good against Tio Pizzella, would come out, or Pizzella, sorry, comes out and leads a touchdown drive of his own right after that, and looked really good. It felt like this defense just kind of had an edge going, and again, they were really sound, looked really good, but this offensive line looked good. They didn't have too many negative plays. It was just a fun game. It was fun to watch this Wake team as how they're coming together. I'm very excited for the fall. As I've said before, I'll be at Legacy Stadium a lot this fall, given that that's the closest stadium to me. I like to get to the stadium, so it's going to be fun. And with that said, I'm going to know this team probably better than I know any other team in college football. So that's going to be an exciting part. Now, the other parts of this is that, we're going to have our episodes on Sundays look a little different. For those of you who know, later in the fall that we do a Saturday live show in the morning and then a Sunday live show in the afternoon on Sundays, or in the early morning on Sundays. Some weeks those are going to be pushed to later in the day, and I think the majority of the year they're going to be pushed to later in the day, simply so I can go through and put together a kind of go through and watch what I've missed from Saturdays while I'm at a Legacy. I think that's kind of what it's going to look like, but that's all to be determined. That's all things that are going to come down the line here over time. So excited for it, though. It's been a fun spring. It's been fun to bring Armchair Analysis back. I appreciate all of you who have been tuning in and supporting here over the first couple weeks. So we're going to keep it going. We got another video coming tomorrow. I don't really know what it's going to be. I'm kind of deciding as we speak. So we'll find some topics, maybe another spring recap, maybe a little bit of something else. I don't really know. I have a lot of different feels for what we could do, and I'll just kind of look around and see if anything strikes me. But appreciate everybody for tuning in again. If you're new around here, leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. Make sure you follow us on social media as well. Follow me on social media. It's us, in a sense, getting a little bit of help around here in terms of getting the social media stuff up and running a little better. You can expect a lot more stuff on social media. You can follow me on X. I post on X, especially when I upload these videos. But when it comes to Instagram and TikTok, you're going to expect more of that as preview season rolls around. There's going to be a lot more stuff going with that, with our top 10 lists. We're going to post those a little bit more. We're going to do a lot more when it comes to the graphic side of things on Instagram, and then TikTok is just kind of going to be a feel out process. I don't really know exactly how I want to do it, whether I want to go schedule previews or do some other types of stuff. It'll probably be a little bit of both. But it's just appreciated either way to follow me over there, help those avenues grow a little more as well. And yeah, with all that said, thank you all so much. We'll see you again tomorrow with another episode of Armchair Analysis.